We had so many of these universities. Everything was destroyed, and some of these libraries took months to burn. All the records of our ancient history, all the scientific texts and whatnot we had, everything was gone. And what we were left with was oral traditions. Some philosophers like Schopenhauer actually said this, that much of what I have written has been influenced by Indian philosophy. But many other philosophers have just wholesale taken it and not credited India. So Lord Indra in the West becomes Zeus, who becomes Jupiter, who becomes Thor. But these people have taken Thor and turned him into a superhero and then made Thor fight with Zeus. Thor and Zeus are the same god actually. One curious thing about physics, the brightest and most capable of the theoretical physicists invariably find themselves being drawn to Hindu scriptures. Oppenheimer is a good example. He quoted the Bhagavad Gita when he saw the first nuclear explosion. It's because at the dawn of the 20th century, we had stumbled upon the quantum realm. Incredibly strange that it defied all logic and it defied all intuition. And then you also had relativity, which was also discovered around this time, which had such strange phenomena like time dilation and the concept of time travel, black holes, wormholes. This is something nobody had ever imagined could exist. And when you read Hindu scriptures, there is mention of all this, and it's thousands of years old. That so-and-so person, king, went to so-and-so realm to speak with Lord Brahma, and then he said, I would like to go back home, and Lord Brahma said, no, you cannot go back home because they've all died, and 3,000 years have passed or whatever. That is time dilation.
What are your thoughts on today's education system?
Garbage. It turns bright, intelligent, curious, bubbly, cheerful young children and turns them into zombies. We teach them what to think, not how to think. We teach them obedience, not creativity. There are so many deep-rooted problems in the Indian education system, particularly first learn a foreign language and only then learn difficult concepts in that language. Why not learn in your mother tongue?
Namaste and welcome to this episode of the Oddcast Show. Today we're going to discuss a lot about Vedic science versus modern science, and we're going to try and draw parallels for that. For that, we have eminent physicist Shri Abhijit Chavda ji on the show, who has his own cult following of young little physicists running around across the world, and he's just going to blow us away with his scientific talk. So, sir, in the last episode when we met, we spoke a lot about modern science and, what its capabilities are and where we are headed towards. But this episode, I would like to try and delve deep into where we come from and, where it all started. And there's a lot of interest in people my age and, across age groups rather, on Vedic sciences. That there is a claim that Vedic sciences knew it all. They already had everything mapped out. They were masters in astronomy, astrology, etc. And they also knew a lot about, so much more about than what we do today. And in that regard, a lot of people think that, we're just rediscovering stuff that was already there. And it's all there in our ancient scriptures and we lost it all. So what's your view on that? Is this true? Where are we?
Yeah. So first of all, the oldest literature that we know of in humanity is the Vedas. The Rig Veda is the oldest of the four Vedas. And if we look at the contents of the Rig Veda, I would not say it's a text of science. It's not a scientific text. It's a cultural, civilizational text that is the foundation of Bharatiya Sanskriti, Bharatiya culture, Indian civilization. And India today is a nation state, but historically we have been a civilization state, which is far greater than a nation. Now, if we look at the Rig Veda, it does raise questions, ask questions that we physicists ask. Where did it all begin? Where have we come from? What's the origin of the universe? And so on. And there is a very famous section in the Rig Veda called the Nasadiya Sukta, in which this question is asked. It's called the foundation hymn or creation hymn in the Rig Veda. And it kind of goes like this, that the gods are part of the universe. But the universe came from somewhere. And if the gods are part of the universe, then who created them? Where did it all come from? Was there darkness? Was there darkness in some kind of ocean? if there was that, then who made that? And perhaps the gods know who created this all, and perhaps even the gods do not know. So it's a deeply agnostic statement that is made in the Rig Veda itself. The Rig Veda, we see it as a religious text, foundational text of Hinduism, but the foundational text that is at the heart and the beginning of Hinduism, as far as we know, is a deeply agnostic text. It says we don't know where it all began. We worship the gods, the Vedic gods, Indra and whoever else, but even they came with the birth of the universe. So who created them? And that's a thing. And as far as I understand, in Hinduism, the only genuinely supernatural god is Lord Shiva, who was never born, he will never die. That's how it is. But and I'm sure everyone knows, and in case they don't know, let me say that I have the deepest of respect and love for Indian culture, Indian civilization, our Vedas, our scriptures, but I don't see them as scientific texts. There are lots of philosophical inquiries in these texts, and science comes from philosophy. Science is a natural outgrowth of philosophy when you take only empirical observational evidence into consideration. That's when philosophy becomes science, because philosophy has one thing in common with science, which is logic. Philosophy is logical, just like science. Spirituality may be about faith and belief, which takes leaps beyond logic. But philosophy is deeply logical. And so is physics. So I think that, and as we know, ancient India, if we go back to very ancient times, we had a very good calendar system, which means we were observing the heavens for thousands of years and tracking the movements of the celestial objects, planets, stars, etc. We know that the oldest evidence of a supernova explosion is found in a carving in present-day Kashmir. It shows two constellations, which is a hunter with a bow and arrow and some other animal, and it shows two suns in the sky. And it's two suns in the sky, same size, but one is the sun and the other one is a supernova explosion. And based on the location of the supernova explosion, the way it is depicted, and its relative position with respect to the constellations, it was determined that this supernova is actually something that really happened around 4200 BC, which is more than 6,000 years before today. So more than 6,000 years before today, somebody made a sky chart and recorded a supernova explosion in Kashmir. And when the Greeks came to India during the Mauryan era, about 2,400 years before today, roughly, then their ambassador to the imperial court of India, Megasthenes, he said that the Indians have a calendar system that goes back to 6,000 something BC. Okay, 6,000 something BC. Can you imagine how long we have been recording time? So we had all the foundations of science in India. A calendar system is a very scientific thing. It's incredibly precise. You have to track the movements of stars and celestial bodies and the seasons and the equinoxes and solstices and all that, and combine that into a proper system. So that tells you how ancient our science was. But the Vedas are not scientific texts. These are cultural and civilizational foundational texts. We must have had lots of scientific texts, but in the destruction of our great universities 1,000 years ago and the burning of our great libraries, I think we have lost the majority of these texts. But there is evidence of Indian science everywhere. Go back 5,000, 6,000 years before today to the Saraswati Sindhu phase of our history. You can see dockyards in Western India that are comparable in size to Vishakhapatnam, where you can berth an aircraft carrier. Okay? Wow. And we had extremely advanced hydro engineering and so much more. If you look at the Saraswati Sindhu era of our history, and you see large cities, metropolitan cities like Harappa, Mohenjo-daro, Kalimbanga, Rakhigadi, etc. You see medium-sized cities, you see towns, you see villages. They are all laid out according to a grid structure. They all have storage facilities for grain. And there is complete standardization of weights and measures.
Even sewage systems, etc.
Sewage systems, absolutely. Drainage systems. There were floods in Pakistan a couple of years ago. And everywhere Pakistan was waterlogged except in Harappa and Mohenjo-daro,
right,
where the 5,000-year-old drainage system drained everything out. Still works.
That's insane.
Insane. So the amount of engineering expertise that we had at the time, which obviously comes from hard science, it was all there. and it demonstrates how advanced we were. So historically, we had tremendous advancements in science that we have evidence of. And that points to things we don't have evidence of, because we must have done research for centuries, if not millennia, to reach that stage.
Correct.
So we can deduce that from the actual hard evidence that we have.
But surely, sir, I mean, like in terms of, like you mentioned that, we were probably observing the universe, the observable universe for centuries, and, we came out with astronomy.
Yes.
And because we were so good at astronomy, we could get into astrology where we could predict. And we could, make, we could predict what a human would do in his lifetime because of, that science that we had. So, and also, like, I saw a reel recently where they said that Hanumanji already knew the distance between our planet and the sun when he jumped up and he tried to gobble up the sun in one of our epics. It's mentioned in that. So surely we knew math, we had Vedic sciences in our Gurukul system, and we had so much more. So what's your view on that?
So a few points about that. We had Vedic era science. It is not essentially Vedic science because it doesn't come from Vedic Vedas, but it was definitely science that the inquiries along those lines began in the Vedic or probably pre-Vedic age. So we had the Gurukula system in which we used to teach all this. We are the birthplace of mathematics, of geometry, of infinite series, of calculus, of so much more, astronomy. And astronomy has astrological applications. Whether it works or not, I don't know. I have never studied astrology. And as far as science goes, science would say that we are deeply skeptical about astrology, that these predictions work or not. So I won't comment about that, about astrology. I know it will be very controversial, but it is what it is. So yes, we had a tremendous foundation, a civilizational foundation. See, in India, we had schools everywhere. And temples were schools.
Right.
We used to have schools in temples.
Right.
In every village, every town, every city had temples of various sizes, and you would get basic education, kindergarten level education, and so on in your basic small temples. And then you had viharas and Mahavishwavidyalaya and whatnot across Indian civilization, including Indonesia, Sumatra, and all these places.
That was the
Vietnam.
extent of the whole thing.
The extent of the whole thing. The whole system was there. So we had this foundation that goes back not centuries, millennia. It goes back thousands of years. The problem is we've lost evidence, the textual written evidence of that. If we had that, nobody would be able to question us. Today, people say that all our history is myths, and you make these claims that you had this and that. Where's the evidence? And from a scientific perspective, where's the evidence? So if somebody says that we had flying machines, well, today we don't have archaeological evidence of those flying machines. We have texts that refer to such flying objects and machines. But we can't prove that this existed given our current state of affairs and understanding and evidence from the evidence perspective.
By burning of the libraries and all these scriptures and all, you mean it's like Nalanda, all those kind of incidents?
Nalanda, Telhara, Vikramshila, Udantapuri, Sharda Peeth, so many more. Hundreds probably. We don't know the names of only a few today. We had so many of these universities. Everything was destroyed, and some of these libraries took months to burn, which tells you how much information, how much data we lost. All the records of our ancient history, all the scientific texts and whatnot we had, everything was gone. And what we were left with was oral traditions.
Right.
Because we were forced to preserve whatever we could remember orally. So when the Europeans reached India, they said, you guys have oral traditions. You guys don't have any sense of history because you never wrote anything down. And then they proceeded to write our history for us. And that's what we are taught today in our education system. Unfortunately.
But sir, there is also a movie called Prometheus. I just want to draw a parallel to that, where, modern science meets our ancient, I may not call it Vedic sciences, as you mentioned, but Vedic era sciences, where in our Vedic era sciences or in our Vedas, it is mentioned that there was God. He came down, he created us, and then he sent these 7 rishis called the Sapta rishis, who were the custodians who held the real wealth, which is knowledge. And they imparted all these Vedas, etc., all this Vedic knowledge to us. And that's how we grew as a civilization, and that's how the world grew. That's what our Vedic era and what our Vedic texts say. Then there's a movie called Prometheus, which comes about, and he says the same thing but in a different language, where he says that there were engineers who came down to this planet, they terraformed this planet, and then they, created humans, and then they have the ability to pull the plug and destroy us whenever they want by releasing some pathogen or some, deadly virus or something like that.
Mhm.
So it's a very big parallel between what we are saying versus what's being depicted in this movie. What's your take on that?
Yeah, it's very interesting. I've seen the movie in a big theater. I remember the initial scene is that this engineer, he ingests something which destroys his body, and all the DNA and all that material goes into a waterfall, and it seeds the entire planet with that material, the genetic material, and kind of this is the seeding of life on the planet Earth. That's the scene that they'd shown. Now, and that seems to be kind of similar to the Saptarishis, and they are depicted as engineers in Prometheus. The thing is, there are so many such examples of Western cinema, of Western culture, art, whatever, let's say borrowing from India. The superhero genre is nothing but our gods.
Absolutely.
Lord Rama, Lord Krishna, Arjun, all those gods are today's superheroes. Hanumanji. The Chinese have Sun Wukong or something they call him. It's the Monkey King, which is Hanuman, the Chinese version of Hanuman. The Japanese have taken all of, we gave, okay, they didn't take. So they also honor our gods with their own names and all. But the Westerners have taken this genre and turned it into an entertainment form. So Lord Indra in the West becomes Zeus, who becomes Jupiter, who becomes Thor. But these people have taken Thor and turned him into a superhero and then made Thor fight with Zeus. Thor and Zeus are the same god, actually. Zeus is the Greek version of Indra, and Thor is the Nordic version of Indra. So how can Thor fight Thor? But that's what they've done. So you will find this in a variety of ways. They have borrowed, you can say digested, you can say stolen our concepts, our art, our civilizational secret stories,
Thought processes,
reconfigured them, and they now put them in this variety of forms in the form of entertainment. And obviously it's a $1 billion industry. Who knows what Marvel is like, and that's how it is. So yes, this is what we see, and most of us today don't even realize that the origin of all these stories that they are putting out on the big screen is actually deep down in India. And they've digested all this. And they've been digesting Indian philosophy also for a long time. Some philosophers like Schopenhauer actually said this, that much of what I have written has been influenced by Indian philosophy. But many other philosophers have just wholesale taken it and not credited India for those ideas, which they give new names and all that. So that's what you see all the time. So Prometheus is a good example. There are many other science fiction movies.
Star Wars, the whole series.
Yeah.
Good and evil,
Dharma,
Dharma versus Adharma.
Yes.
That's what it talks about.
Yes, may the force be with you.
Main episodes of that movie, it's all that.
Yes, it is.
So, sir, also one question I had is that I read recently that CERN, where they developed the God particle, where that was discovered, and the scientists over there, they have put out a Shiva's Nataraja statue at the entrance lobby of that entire institute. Why would they do that?
Yeah, that's a question even I don't have an answer to, really. Lord Shiva is obviously the only truly supernatural god in Hinduism. He existed before the universe was born, and he will still be around when Lord Brahma dies, which means the end of this universe, the one we inhabit. And it is his dance that creates the universe, and it is his wrath that will destroy the universe eventually. So he is the creator, maintainer, and eventual destroyer of the universe. So that is physics in a nutshell, actually. Big Bang theory, and maybe the Big Bang ends in a big crunch, perhaps, or something like that. Or maybe conformal cyclic cosmology, like we discussed in the previous episode. So maybe it is the inspiration, just some form of inspiration, perhaps. Obviously, they are not trying to profess their belief in Hinduism or any such thing, but maybe this is the one god, the one divinity that kind of embodies particle physics, the cauldron of the collider collisions and the incredible energy that are unleashed, the destructive force of that, and the creative force in which you can transform that. So maybe that's the reason why Lord Shiva's statue is there in Mera, in Geneva, between on the border between France and Switzerland. And the Large Hadron Collider, one good thing it has done, it has discovered the Higgs boson, which some people like to call the God particle. It's the particle that imbues the universe with mass. Without that particle, there would be no mass in the universe, and it would be a very different universe we live in. So that's what I can offer to you about Lord Shiva's presence in CERN.
Right. But also, sir, in like I have been doing a little bit of reading on our ancient scriptures, like whatever little that we have left. Yeah. Like you mentioned, most of it was, burnt down. But whatever we have, whatever ancient knowledge that has now, which was oral then, which was preserved orally. Yes. And then again rewritten. what I read is that there's a lot of stuff like those celestial weapons that we had. We had the Pushpak Vimana that could fly. We had so many access to so much of tech. And there was, teleportation happening where, people could travel from one planet to another planet or from one realm to another realm. And as we understood in the previous episode, that modern science is advancing towards those stages where we are like trying to rediscover or discover these things again, where, we can have teleportation, time travel, you can have time dilation. There are so many things that these concepts that are being talked about in the last episode have actually already been talked about in our scriptures. So surely there is something that's happened, where, and it's just unfortunate that we have lost it all. So what's your view on that? Is this really true or is it just mythology?
One curious thing about physics, theoretical physics, is that the brightest and most capable of the theoretical physicists invariably find themselves being drawn to Hindu scriptures. Oppenheimer is a good example. He quoted the Bhagavad Gita when he saw the first nuclear explosion. Heisenberg is an example. Schrödinger, perhaps. I mean, most of these guys were drawn towards Hindu scriptures. And what's the reason for that? It's because at the dawn of the 20th century, we had stumbled upon the quantum realm. And the quantum realm was so incredibly strange that it defied all logic and it defied all intuition. And then you also had relativity, which was also discovered around this time, which had such strange phenomena like time dilation and the simultaneity of continuity, which means and inertial frames and whatnot. So, and the concept of time travel, black holes, wormholes, and quantum mechanics, you can have particles going through walls and whatnot. This is something nobody had ever imagined could exist. And when you read Hindu scriptures, there's mention of all this, and it's thousands of years old.
Correct.
And that's why they were mystified and attracted and drawn towards the Hindu philosophical scriptures. Because whatever they were discovering was already written off. Now, what does it mean? First of all, it means that whichever way all these concepts were thought of in ancient India, they somehow have some parallels in the real world. Now, does it mean that our scientists thousands of years ago, when the Vedas and the Bhagavad Gita were written, were they doing quantum mechanical experiments? We don't have any evidence of that. But here's the deal. There seems to be some parallel between the inner universe and the external universe.
Right.
The internal universe and the external universe. When you meditate, it's not like everyone can meditate. For most people, most people can't do it. I can't claim to be a great meditator,
true.
right? But some people have that capability and that power to be able to retreat deep within the internal universe for long periods of time and gain insights about the external universe from there. And maybe that's how they gained these insights and they wrote about them, because these were remarkable things, the things that they had seen and they had experienced, but within themselves. That is one possibility. The other possibility is they were actually doing quantum mechanical experiments, but we have no evidence of that. I am open to the possibility, however remote it may be, that they may have done it, but we have zero evidence of that. But what cannot be denied is that we had been writing about this thousands of years before it was actually discovered in the 20th century. That is something that has consistently drawn the brightest of the theoretical physicists, the ones who are grappling with the most difficult of problems, towards Hindu philosophy, because there seems to be something here. So they want to look into this, go deeper into it.
I mean, surely they couldn't have just imagined it and conjured all this up, right?
You can't conjure this thing up.
You can't conjure it to such detail.
Yes. Time dilation is such an incredible concept that if you travel at a certain velocity and you go a certain distance, then you will... The twin paradox. Let's say you have twins who are born at the same time, same age. One twin remains on Earth. The other twin goes on a long voyage on a spacecraft that is at a relativistic speed, which means comparable to the speed of light. Let's say half the speed of light. So this twin who is in the spacecraft comes back after 1 year from his perspective. For him, 1 year has passed. But when he returns over here, maybe for his twin, the other guy, 80 years have passed. I'm just giving an example. I'm not saying that's exactly how it works. That's the twin paradox. But in Hindu scriptures, there are mentions of things exactly like this. That so-and-so person, king, went to so-and-so realm to speak with Lord Brahma. And then he said, I would like to go back home. And Lord Brahma said, no, you cannot go back home because they've all died. And 3,000 years have passed or whatever. That is time dilation. That is the concept.
That's time dilation, right?
Yes.
Right.
So, sir, you've made certain references towards quantum and towards, you said that sometimes temples were considered schools back then, if not gurukuls. So before we get into quantum a little bit deeper with reference to the overlap between that and the Vedic era science, I want to talk about the education system today versus the education system in those days.
Okay.
What would you do? Well, actually, before that, what are your thoughts on today's education system?
Garbage.
Okay.
Utter garbage.
But why do you say that?
Okay, let me explain why. Look, what is the purpose of education? The purpose of education or an education system is to create bright, young, capable and confident young citizens who can go out into the real world and make a genuine difference, who are capable of thinking critically, critical thinking, who are capable of seeing good versus bad, right versus wrong, and who are capable of genuinely transforming the world in some way, however big or large it can be. And we want to create at least a few leaders per capita. So out of every 100,000 students who go out, at least you want to have, let's say, 2,000 capable of genuine leadership. That sort of thing. Does the current education system do that? It does the opposite. It turns bright, intelligent, curious, bubbly, cheerful young children and turns them into zombies. It takes their brains and lobotomizes them. They are no longer capable of seeing right from wrong, of discerning right from wrong, lies from truth. They are no longer capable of thinking on their own. We teach them what to think, not how to think. We teach them obedience, not creativity. We teach them it is dangerous to ask questions. Your teacher may get upset. We teach them to defer to authority, not to question authority. I'm not saying we should question authority all the time and be rebellious, but we should know what is right and what's wrong and when you should question authority.
Not blindly follow it.
Not blindly follow anything, absolutely. These are the problems, inherent problems in the education system. It is about rote memorization. You have to take permission from your teacher for anything. Teacher, may I stand up? Teacher, may I sit down? Teacher, may I go to the loo? Teacher, may I breathe? That's how it is. And it's all about obedience. The students that teachers typically like the most are the most obedient students, not the ones who ask the best questions. They hate students who ask questions.
Yeah.
There are so many deep-rooted problems in the Indian education system, particularly. The first thing is that our kids have to first learn a foreign language, which I'm currently speaking, and then learn the foreign language and only then learn difficult concepts in that language. Why not learn in your mother tongue? Why not? And I would say that the first thing we should do is to make the Sanskrit language the official medium of education in India, because it is the genuinely true mother tongue of India. All of our languages, much of our vocabulary comes from Sanskrit, whether we realize it or not. So Sanskrit is not some ancient alien foreign language. It is almost a living language, and we are all familiar with it, whether we realize or not. So, and it is the most logical language that we know of. It is an almost algorithmic language. 3,300 something rules by Panini. You put that into a computer system like ChatGPT. Imagine what that system will do. So, Sanskrit should be the medium of education. I know lots of people won't like what I'm saying. That's okay. But we need to have one language, one civilizational language, teach everything in that. And the stakeholders should be the students, not the teachers. Today, what do I mean by that? Today, I am making the claim that the stakeholders of the Indian education system are the non-academic staff and the academic staff, not the students. And I'll prove it to you. If today a student misbehaves in school, he or she could be expelled. They will be punished harshly. If a teacher misbehaves or a peon misbehaves,
it will be pushed under the carpet.
It will be pushed under the carpet, swept under the carpet. This is what we see all the time, which tells you that the education system prioritizes the needs, desires, wants of the teachers compared to those of the students. And when the students are no longer the priority, what's going to happen? It's a broken system. And look at the higher education system. It should be focused on research. Where's the research in India? The best minds are forced to go outside the country to do anything good in life. So that there are so many problems in the education system, the Indian education system. It is rotten to the core.
I just want to interject over there and ask you that you mentioned the Indian education system. Is this the Indian education system?
No.
Because this was not it. We already had it perfected earlier. This is a borrowed system, right?
Absolutely.
So where did we go wrong? What happened?
This is the right question. The current Indian education system is nothing but the 21st century version of the 19th century colonial education system that the British imposed upon us after destroying the indigenous education system. We had an indigenous education system which was spread all across the country, mainly based out of temples, small temples, big temples, like I just mentioned. And this has been, data has been collected about this by a writer called Dharma, who wrote, I think, a 3-volume series called The Beautiful Tree, in which he has voluminous, hard data of the Indian education system, how many students in which part of the country were studying, how many boys, how many girls, how many so-called this caste, that caste, everything has been put out in detail. And it tells you that girls had the same access to education as boys. And no matter which so-called caste you were born in, you all had access to the education system. It was a much better education system in the 19th century. The British took this thing, they destroyed it, and they imposed this new system on India. And the British imposed education system as one objective. It is to create clerks and peons and to prevent any leaders from emerging. And that is what we are continuing today. Yeah, today we will have MBAs, we will teach computer science, we may even teach physics and all that. But the method in which we are teaching is the method that is designed to stifle and destroy creativity. And it emphasizes rote learning. It teaches you how to pass exams. It doesn't teach you any real concepts. A person with a first-class degree in whichever subject if you find such a person, it doesn't mean that person has any skills. So that's the problem. That's why we have all these people with paper degrees and no skills who are unemployable, many of them.
So what, apart from inculcating Sanskrit in the school
That's
system,
the first step.
Yeah, but what apart from that would you do? Because there are many schools today that also do a little bit of Sanskrit, if not making it compulsory. So what would you do apart from that if you were given the power to change the entire system to whatever you think is fit?
Or what's stopping us from going back to the old system, that work which was perfect?
Yeah.
I think the old system may not be, it will be very hard to bring it back today. Firstly, because in the 19th century, India's population was about 300 or so million.
Okay.
Today, our population is almost 5 times that.
Yeah.
With less area. I'm talking about United India in the 19th century,
right,
including whatever we have lost. So the population of the entire subcontinent essentially was about 330 or so million around the 19th century. Today, we are 4-5 times of that, and we have much less area. Surface area, and in today's world we have all these jobs that have been created, the 9-to-5 system and all. The Indian academic system, the Gurukul system, etc., was not based on that. It was based on apprenticeship, and only a few students would go and get a very high degree, like in Nalanda, Takshashila, etc. Most of the students would simply go into an apprenticeship after learning basic education, which is proper grammar and mathematics, arithmetic, 2 + 2 = 4, multiplication, division, basic stuff. Then you go into apprenticeship for whatever trade is your family trade or whatever you are good for.
You're inclined to.
Yeah. So you do that during your teens, and by the time you're 16 or something, you're ready to actually go out and earn your livelihood. That's how it used to be. And today, most people who have to go for master's degrees and all, they just want a job in something. Maybe in some people want to
जो भी मिल जाएगा मेरे को, I'll take it.
नहीं, कुछ लोगों का ड्रीम होता है. Some people have a dream that I want to be a computer engineer. I want to do what Orange County Choppers used to do and build motorcycles or whatever. Some people like the mechanical art and whatever. So everybody, some people want to be entertainers. Some people want to do sculptures, whatever. But there was a space for all of these professions back then in ancient India. Today, if you are a singer or if you're an entertainer or if you want to do sculpture or whatever, you may struggle to earn a livelihood. So it was a very different society back then. Today, the whole society is based on the consumer-driven things and all that. It is based on the service industry. Now manufacturing is coming up. So it's a very different India today in the 21st century, which is why the old education system, Gurukul system, may not be the right system for now. Maybe eventually we can transition to that. But what needs to happen now is that we have to teach skills. The first thing is stop teaching 7 languages. Right now we have to learn the mother tongue plus English plus the national language, 3 languages. 30-40% is just languages. I think there should be only 1 language or maximum 2, the civilization language and the mother tongue. That should be enough. And the medium of education should be one of these 2. Then there should be emphasis on mathematics up to a certain level. I don't understand why you need trigonometry and calculus in daily life. Do you need that?
No.
I am a theoretical physicist.
I've not used the Pythagoras theorem anywhere in my life so far.
Exactly. Why do you need that? Okay, you can teach up to a certain level. What you need in life is arithmetic. You need to know numbers, addition, multiplication, subtraction. You can rule the stock market with that much. You don't need matrix algebra and all that for that. So I don't know why such things are being taught forcibly to everybody. Those who have the inclination for that, teach them differential equations, whatever you want. But why unnecessarily
generalize it?
The general population. So there are things that are being taught that don't need to be taught. I love advanced mathematics, but I'm saying this. So it has to be a rational system, and people should be in a position to start doing their preferred job or their preferred line of work by the time they're 15, 16. Why do we have to wait till they're in the mid-20s to start something? Right?
Right.
And the entire emphasis should be on skills. So the education system, I mean, a typical person's educational lifespan should be maybe 10 years. Not 20 years, the way it is today. Yep. It's a waste of people's most productive years. So there's a lot that can be done. I'm just giving a very rough overview.
Essentially, what you're saying is that, we're not creating any more thinkers.
We're not creating thinkers. We're not creating leaders.
We are creating drone worker bees.
Drone worker bees, zombies, robots. That's what we're creating. There's no ability for critical thinking. Imagine most children, when they are born, when they're toddlers, they're so curious. They're full of questions.
Right.
There's so much curiosity, there's so much joie de vivre. They enjoy the world. By the time they're 10, all that is smashed out of their heads.
It's
Killed. Destroyed. We want a system that actually emphasizes enhances this, encourages this. That's what we need in a country, in a civilization. Then imagine how vibrant the entire civilization will be when everybody has that attitude. So that's what we need to recreate. Currently, it is just a business. The entire education industry is an industry designed to make money. Every degree costs, I don't know how many, minimum 10 lakhs for a degree, I would say. Yes. That is at the lower end.
Right.
So it's terrible. I would say that let the government charge tax from everybody, whether we realize or not. Every single Indian citizen pays tax, everybody pays GST.
Absolutely.
So everybody is a taxpayer. It's wrong to call lots of people not taxpayers. Everyone's a taxpayer. You charge additional tax if you want, but make education free and make education based only on merit. So not everybody should have to go get a master's degree. Once you have a diploma in whatever skill set, then it should be enough for you to get a job. So a lot of change.
Today you can spend money and get that degree, right?
Yes, right now.
You can buy a degree today.
You can buy a degree, paper degree today. Yeah.
That's how convoluted we become.
It has become like that. So all these problems need to be rectified. There is so much politics in academic departments, the college, university level. Typically, if you want to advance, you have to be good at politics, not at your subject. And most heads of departments are administrators, not scientists or whatever. And the head clerk in a department has more power than the head of department. It is a rotten system, rotten to the core. And I'm very familiar with it. So
you've just blown this whole thing apart.
Right. So, sir, I would like to take you back to the part where we're drawing parallels between our current science and our ancient science.
Okay, yes.
So, the topic I would like to touch upon right now is quantum mechanics. There's a scientist, I forgot his name, but he quotes that everything that we call real, as in all the matter around us, is made of things that cannot be regarded as real, is what he says. And you also touched upon it in the previous episode, that the laws which we operate on over here are very different from the quantum realm, where it's basically the laws operate very differently over there, the world is very different, and the outcomes are very different. My question is, in Hindu Dharma, we have a concept of this thing called Mohamaya, where we say that everything around us is an illusion. And another reference I want to draw is the book we spoke about last time, the really short history of nearly everything.
Okay.
In that, he's basically said that, let's just assume for a minute that I have tweezers and I have the ability to pluck out particle by particle of my body, and I lay it out on the floor like that. They are just particles, but they don't have life in them. But when they put them back to me, there's life in that.
Okay.
So, what is this?
Yes. First, let's talk about Maya.
Yeah.
There is a concept in Hindu Dharma that the universe is illusory. It is Maya. Let us approach this from a couple of perspectives. This pillow is red. What does it mean? It means that white light is incident on the pillow, and the pillow absorbs all of the wavelengths, all of the photons of most wavelengths, but reflects photons that are representative of the red wavelength. Okay? So this photon, this light particle, light is a wave, it's a particle, wave-particle duality. This comes into our eyes and it has a certain wavelength, a certain frequency, and that hits our retina. And the rods and cone cells of our retina, they register the frequency of this thing and they send a nerve impulse to the mind that this is something we should interpret as red.
Right.
So our mind creates a red image. If it's yellow, it's a different frequency and all. So the real world out there is frequencies and vibrations and wavelengths. But if we try to see that, the real world in real time, our brain will need so much processing power that we will not be able to react to the world. It's like, see your cell phone. You open your cell phone, you unlock it, and you see all the apps and all that, right? And you want to send an email, or you want to send a WhatsApp message or text message. You just type something and you send it. What's actually happening in the phone is that there are voltages being toggled, and there are gates being opened and closed, and all kinds of complicated processing is happening. But what you see is a very simplified version of that. So the world we see is actually a very simplified version of what the real world is. Yeah. That is one version, one way of looking at it. Another way of looking at it is from the perspective of quantum field theory. Quantum field theory is the most successful theory we have apart from general relativity. We know it works. There is no doubt about it. Now, what does quantum field theory say? It says there are no particles. Atoms, protons, neutrons, electrons, quarks, whatever. These are illusions. What we have is fields. Okay? So there is a single proton field in the universe. And the individual things that we see as protons are local excitations in this field. It's like local waves in the field. Similarly, there's only one neutron field, there's only one electron field. And all these neutrons, electrons, and all the combination of these are local excitations of this huge universal field. And it is the interactions of these fields with each other that create the particles and the forces that we imagine to exist, to be real. Mm. So at the deep end of the thing, the real, if you peel back the wheels, it's just fields. So field is like a force field that we can think of in movies and science fiction and all. That is the truth behind quantum field theory, the most successful theory we have apart from general relativity. It explains almost everything we see. Whatever we understand, most of it is because of either general relativity or quantum field theory.
Could we get an example on this? Like you said that it definitely works. Like, can we get a real life example on this?
I mean, we for example, all the interactions. We have the strong nuclear force, we have the weak nuclear force, we have the electromagnetic force, we have something called the electroweak force, which is the unification of the weak nuclear force and the strong and the electromagnetic force. All of these interactions, we did not understand how they work until we came with quantum field theory, which says that it is the interactions between fields that cause these forces, what we imagine to be forces. And the math works out and all, and so we know it really works. So there are lots of such examples of the fact that quantum field theory is proven to work, and it's a theory of fields only. Everything is a field. Even vacuum, and it has, another example of how quantum field theory is proven to work. We have something called vacuum energy. So vacuum, when we think of vacuum outside in space or in wherever else, it's emptiness. There's nothing in a vacuum. It's just empty space, right? But according to quantum field theory, there is no empty space. There are particle-antiparticle pairs being formed and destroyed at the same time everywhere throughout vacuum. And vacuum itself has a certain energy. And this energy creates spontaneously these pairs which are created and annihilated. And the pair production happens in such a way that Heisenberg's uncertainty principle is not violated, which is the energy time thing and all that. So that has been proven. We know that these quantum fields exist. I think the Casimir effect is based on that. So it has been proven experimentally. So quantum field theory is proven. It is experimentally proven, and it explains things that otherwise would not be explainable. And according to this theory, everything is just fields. There are no particles. Okay. So that is another example.
I've never heard this. I mean, like I'm not from the science background, but this is mind-boggling.
So there are lots of ways of seeing that the universe is way stranger than what we imagine it to be. What we are seeing is a simplified version of the real world. It's like seeing your cell phone and seeing the apps and just doing some simple operations.
But inside there's so much of complexity.
Inside there is so much complexity. So the real world, there's complexity right here. But we are being shown a very sanitized and simplified version of that. Otherwise, our mind would not be able to process it. So yeah, that's Maya, isn't it? Same concept.
Correct. Okay. A very interesting explanation on that. Now, I would like to move a little bit to death, a little bit in this, where in the previous episode, we spoke about technology doing certain things that we dream of today, like, getting free information, downloading my brain onto computers, certain things like that. Was there any reference in the Vedic texts where they will not use the word technology, obviously, there must be something else, where that can conquer death, where I just die and I download myself into a new unit wherever I want?
I think in Hindu Dharma, in our scriptures and all, we have the concept of the soul, Atma, and the concept of karma, and the concept of reincarnation. These three concepts kind of go hand in hand. So the soul is the indestructible element that is inherent to you, and that remains constant through the cycle of death and rebirth. Then you have karma. In physics, you are familiar with conservation laws.
Yes.
The law of conservation of energy, momentum, so on and so forth. Karma is the law of conservation of the merits and demerits of your actions. It is conserved across lifetimes and it is attached to your soul. It's a conservation law. It's a very logical concept. Okay? Right. Karma. And then you have the concept of reincarnation. That the body will eventually perish, but the Atma, it doesn't perish. The Atma is immortal. It is part of Brahman. And it is connected to the universal consciousness. And your local consciousness will somehow persist. You will be reborn. Maybe you will forget all the memories, as usually happens. But in some cases, it is said that in some people, memories persist.
Right.
And that's how it is. So that is the deal in Hindu Dharma. I am not an expert in Hindu Dharma. I have not read all the Shastras, all the scriptures. Okay, I am a novice in that, but I have some basic understanding. And from that, I can say that these are the concepts in Hindu Dharma. There is no concept or any story or any such thing in which you're talking about downloading your consciousness or memories into some kind of receptive vessel or whatever. It's not there. So we have an imperishable soul that persists across lifetimes. And eventually, if you are lucky, you attain nirvana, in which your soul is liberated. It gets moksha from the circle of rebirths, and it becomes part of the Brahman.
Okay.
That's how it is.
Okay. Does quantum physics have any explanation for reincarnation?
No.
Not at all?
No.
Okay.
Quantum physics it deals with the material world, the physical world. The particles, antiparticles, all that, and the fields. That's what it is. It's about material, observable objects and phenomena.
Right.
When it comes to the soul, it is neither measurable, nor quantifiable, not observable. It is like consciousness. It is like life. Look, you see a cat, you know it's conscious. You know it immediately. You know it's alive, you know it's conscious.
Correct.
You see a fly, a mosquito, you know there is some consciousness in there.
Correct.
And you know there's life. You see a plant, maybe a certain degree of consciousness, and definitely life is there. You see a stone or a rock or a mug, you know there's no consciousness, there's no life. So when you see it, you recognize it. It exists, but you can't define it. You can't define consciousness from the perspective of physics or biology or neuroscience or chemistry or whatever. Similarly, you can't really define life. Actually. So it's like that. So when it comes to the concept of soul, it is kind of like the concept of consciousness or life. You can't really define it. But yeah, I mean, you can imagine that every living being, every conscious being could have a soul. Mm-hmm. But what is the soul? Can you define it? Can you observe it? Can you measure it? You can't. And when it is an object, it is something that cannot be measured, defined, etc. It is part of philosophy, not science.
Right.
I just want to come back to the time dilation point that you mentioned, that that it's been mentioned thousands of years ago in our Vedic scriptures, texts, etc.
Yes.
And recently, in the last century, there was this dude who hiked up to Mount Kailash, and he came back in 5 days. He couldn't reach the top. for some reason, and when he came back, he was completely disillusioned, and he had aged like something like 5 or 7 years in those 5 days, is what they claim. And he also said there is some evidence on, there's something captured where he said that he felt like he's climbing up, but actually he was climbing down.
Okay.
So he didn't know in what direction he was heading, etc. And the government has banned trekking, hiking, etc. over there for a long time.
Yes.
Since I don't know how many decades. Apart from that, there's another dude who came and said that, okay, just by looking at Mount Kailash also, you can get, you can go into you can lose your mind.
I see.
So what's the truth here? Because there is also a spiritual guru whose book we read, where he's mentioned that below Mount Kailash, he's been to a cave where he's seen extraterrestrial life. He's seen tech from other dimensions and other realms, which is so high end that it should not fall into the hands of humans today.
I see.
Because they'll end up taking it and destroying stuff, etc.
Mm.
And he also said there are nutritional cubes out there where, you can consume them and you don't have to eat or drink for 100 years. And that's how yogis evolve, where, they can just be in tapasya for hundreds of years without consuming anything. So is this all true? Like what is going on out here? Like,
okay. So first of all, I have not been there. I don't think the Chinese will be happy if I go there. It's under Chinese control.
Right.
They're not a big fan of me. So what I know is that the Chinese have banned anybody from climbing Mount Kailash. I think it's a very wise step by the Chinese government, because it is the holiest place on earth from the perspective of Hinduism, Buddhism, and the local Tibetan-born religion. And Jainism also. Every dharmic religion considers Mount Kailash to be probably the center of the universe. Mount Meru, it's where Lord Shiva lives, right? It is his abode. So we know that. It's one of the most sacred places in Hinduism. Kailash Mansarovar, the lake next door, essentially. So there is that. Now the Chinese have banned, like you mentioned, climbing the mountain or even touching the mountain, going close to it for decades. So if that is the case, I would be skeptical about whoever has said that they have got inside the mountain and seen something. The Chinese won't allow that, first of all.
no, I mean, like, he's astrally traveled. His astral body has traveled there and seen all this.
Astral
Is
travel.
what the spiritual guru has written in his book.
Okay. I see. So I don't know about astral travel, all that. As far as science is concerned, it doesn't work. But science can't explain everything, like we've discussed. It can't explain 95% of the universe. So we have to have an open mind. So let's say he's astrally traveled there, and he has seen things like extraterrestrial bodies and spacecraft and whatever, the cubes, nutritional cubes. Well, what can I say about that? I haven't seen it. And therefore, who am I to say whether it's right or wrong?
But there is a possibility.
That's a possibility.
Always a possibility.
I'm open to the possibility that aliens have visited the Earth in the past. I have seen zero evidence of that. But it is definitely possible. It is not beyond
alone.
the realm of possibility.
That we agree on that, right?
Yes.
We're not alone in this universe.
We have no evidence that
we have no evidence.
But it is very likely, I would say,
that
they exist.
So, sir, one of the questions I had was, in our ancient science, in the Vedic era where there was science, it has defined, our scriptures defined life, our purpose to be here, as well as they define death. What is the meaning of death? What happens to the soul after death? What are the possibilities of that? And then how rebirth happens and why it happens, etc. That's all detailed explanations are there in our scriptures. Mm-hmm. And it's all like you mentioned earlier, it's karmic driven, where, you have to face the consequences of what you've done in this life, sometime or the other, maybe in the next life, or in the same life, or in the next many lives. Modern science, what does that have to say about this? Like, where do they have an explanation for this, or can I just be a criminal and, commit as many horrible crimes in this life and get away with that, because science basically stops once the person dies? Modern science. So what's your take on that?
Yeah, modern science is very sterile, very, very clinical. It's very unemotional, and it looks only at the physical material world. So from the perspective of modern science, the human being is an organism. It's a collection of organs that all work together in synchronicity. You can reduce it down to to individual systems, or you can add it up and maybe it's more than the sum of its parts. But that's all it is. Modern science does not talk about anything that is not observable, like the soul. So when we talk about death, when we talk about reincarnation, when we talk about life, whatever existence exists, maybe there after death, or whatever comes before birth, that is beyond modern science. Recently, what happened, there was a person with epilepsy, I believe, who was elderly, who was in terminal care or whatever, and that person was hooked up to a brain to an electroencephalogram, and that person happened to die while he was hooked up. And so the machine was able to measure the brain activity while the person was taking his last breaths. And what they found is similar to what we are told, that, when a person is dying, they typically see a series of flashbacks of their entire life, like a highlights reel, and then the brain activity stops. So that's as far as we can go when it comes to death from the perspective of modern science. They have finally been able to record the brain activity of a person who is dying. But in Hindu Dharma, from our dharmic perspective, whether it is whichever dharmic path, you have a time before birth, which is after death, in which the soul takes some time to recuperate or do some kind of debriefing or whatever you would call it. And then you get to choose your next path, wherever you will be born next, who will your parents be and all that. That's how it typically is. And the kind of characteristics, physical characteristics, attributes, mental attributes, all that you get are based on your karmic sum total of your karmic
the consequences of
the consequences of that.
Right.
So that's how it is in Hindu Dharma, in Dharma itself. From the perspective of science, there is no such thing. So the moment you die, it is the end. So Carl Sagan is a very famous scientist,
right,
who was a very famous science popularizer. He was the author of this book called Contact, science fiction book. He was also in this show called Cosmos.
Right.
And he was an atheist, and he said that, and he died of cancer. And he gave, I don't know, last lecture or something, in which he said that I know that once I am dead, I will cease to exist, but I have been a happy life and whatever. So he was of the opinion that once he dies, it's the end of it, and he will never see his loved ones again. They will never see him again. Well, so the question is, does God exist or not? Does the soul exist or not? Science can't answer that, but science can't answer lots of things. And there are many people, scientists, who claim that that emotions are chemical reactions, love is a chemical reaction, our feelings, our thoughts are chemical reactions and neurological processes, and God doesn't exist, and all that. My point is, from the perspective of science, you can't define consciousness, and how can you claim? What empirical evidence do you have that so-and-so chemical reaction produces so-and-so emotion? And what evidence do you have that there is no God? I know we don't have evidence of God, but we don't understand 95% of the universe. So can you really claim, based on the little that we know, that we understand the entire universe, and therefore claim that there is no God? So from my perspective, if you ask me, I am not an atheist. I would be more of an agnostic. But I find it slightly ridiculous that some scientists believe in atheism. It is like claiming that I know everything about the universe, which doesn't make sense from any perspective.
But surely, sir, there must be a purpose why we're here, right? I mean, our scriptures define that purpose also, that, there is Dharma, you have to protect Dharma. There is a purpose why you're born, and, based on your karmic evolution, you either de-evolve or evolve further. And ultimately, you merge with the supreme being or the creator.
Yes.
Whoever the creator may be. That's what they say. So that makes a lot of logical sense, because that prevents people from, doing wrong things, or, from trying to, be on the righteous path, etc. Whereas modern science, and if it just dissolves everything, it just ceases to exist when you're dead, then that doesn't make any logical sense. Then, that what's the purpose of being here? I could just be a loser and just do nothing, and harm people, be a criminal and get away with all. So it just doesn't make logical sense to me.
So if you see the trajectory that Western society is taking, for the past 1,000 or so years, it's been a Christian society, right? Christianity has taken over. Now today you are seeing a significant decline in the number of people who still believe in Christianity. But the ones who are leaving Christianity are not embracing any other religion. So most of them are becoming atheists. And you can see the moral and cultural trajectory Western society is taking. It is declining. It is going backwards.
The value system,
the morality, the ethics, all of that. You see so much more crime. You see so much more criminality. You see what would in the past be called debauchery and perverted behavior, whatever you want to call it, in the past. So you see that happening. So when you stray away from a proper moral, ethical framework, then you descend into chaos. Society descends into chaos. And that applies to any religion. all religions are different. I do not make the claim all religions are the same. They're all very, very different. The dharmic religions are all similar, and we have a certain viewpoint. So the point is,
you mean your pagan religions versus monolithic religions?
Monotheistic religions versus polytheistic religions. Right. Basically, that's the main difference. Right. So when it comes to the dharmic religions, we have a certain moral path, and we know we have a very clear sense of what's right and what's wrong, and that helps society stay on the right path. That helps an individual stay on the right path. So it helps to believe in God, and even if you don't believe in God, if you are a Gnostic, you can still be dharmic while being Gnostic.
You can believe in the values.
You can believe in the values. You can respect your traditions, your values, while perhaps individually not having that much faith in the existence of a God. But you need a moral path, and it's very hard for you to create a moral set of moral principles a priori from scratch. It helps to have a civilizational framework to back you up.
Right.
Yeah, so that's how it is. So in the West, there is the societies are going astray. They're moving away from what we would historically have called a moral path. And that's a big decline we are seeing in society over there.
Right. In the last episode, we touched upon the Kardashev scale. I just want to just talk about it briefly, because the Russian scientist Kardashev, where he's made a scale, and he says that he's made the scale judging civilizations on their ability to harness energy.
Yes.
So a type 1 civilization would typically be someone who can harness, a species who can harness the entire energy of their planet.
Yes.
A type 2 would be, probably the solar system. A type 3 would be the galaxy.
Yeah.
And type 4 and so on. And by that definition, we are not even a type 0 civilization is what I'm guessing right now.
Yeah.
But my question is that our ancient scriptures sort of define that in a way where they say Shiva is the ultimate supreme being and he's a type 7 civilization being, is what they say. So recently there's a lot of stuff that I've seen on this on the internet, on reels, etc., where people are claiming this, that Kardashev borrowed this scale from our system, etc., and he just conjured it up. What's the truth here? What's your take on it?
So I am not aware of the methodology and the thought process that went behind Kardashev coming up with this scale. As far as I know, it was his original thinking, and he was looking at it from an engineering perspective. So I want to harness energy. What are the best energy sources? You can burn coal, you can burn petroleum or whatever. It gives you this much energy in 1 year, let's say, based on how much you are burning per year. But if you see the energy that the entire human species uses in 1 year, you get about that much energy in 10 minutes from the sun, free energy. Right? So what if we can acquire the technological means to harness all the energy resources of an entire planet? He called it type 1. Now, the sun is giving so much free energy. Why not harness that? So if a civilization can harness the entire total energetic output of its parent star, host star, then it's a type 2. And type 3 is galaxy, type 4 is universe, and I don't know about type 7 or whatever. So that is, I think, the way in which he thought from an engineering perspective. I don't know if he was exposed to Hinduism or not, so I cannot make any
but
statement.
The narrative there is that if you deep dive into it and if you read, documents on it, at what he means by that, or what people's takes are on it, they say that type 3 would be some sort of a demigod type of a situation. A type 4 civilization would be someone who can, who has access to interstellar travel. A type 5 would be someone who can alter his physicality, and they would get to that level eventually and then become God.
I don't want to mean.
It's leading to.
You know what they say? A sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. So for a dog or a cat, if we can switch a light on, or if we can do whatever, for them it's magic, because they simply can't comprehend how it's done. Similarly, there'll be civilizations and technologies I believe would exist that for us would be magical, because we simply cannot understand.
We couldn't believe it only.
We can't believe it happens. Yeah. So those beings would look like demigods or actual gods to us. So yeah, it makes sense from that perspective.
And then again ties back to the Prometheus movie, where these beings have come as engineers and come and engineered and terraformed this planet. Maybe.
So it's a very well thought out premise for a movie.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
So I would like to take you back to the part where we're talking about death Basically, let's just say, for argument's sake, that the past lives, future lives, current lives narrative is true for now. The sort of gestation period between my death from my previous life and my birth in my current life is what people today call the afterlife. And there is a movie based on that called The Discovery. It's based in America, where a scientist proves the afterlife scientifically, and he hasn't exactly shown empirical evidence on it in the movie, but he's proven it through some scientific mean. As soon as that is proved, there has been a mass wave of Americans committing suicide. And the number goes to
millions of them.
4 million within a couple of years. If you are a scientist today and you prove the afterlife, what do you think is going to happen? Is that
the logic in the movie is that people are so frustrated and fed up of living here that once they come to know that there is an afterlife and there is something better, and they have a chance to re-evolve there or, try and pay for their sins and come back in a better life, they would rather die and then live on this planet because they're suffering. Everyone suffers.
So it's kind of a statement, it's kind of a commentary on the state of society today.
Right.
Kind of. So let's say we actually prove that the afterlife exists. What would happen? I don't know what would happen. Would people start committing suicide? Well, if the afterlife exists the way we portray it in, let's say, Hindu Dharma, then according to Hindu Dharma, if you commit suicide, that is a karmic loss for you. It is a karmic negative action.
Correct.
Which is going to... Essentially, I believe in the dharmic school of thought, if a person commits suicide, in the next life or in a future life, they'll end up in the same position where they would maybe make a different choice. Because you moved past that situation to pay off your karmic debt or something like that. So I think it's, even if you discover that the afterlife exists, it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to start committing suicide. You have to still face your problems because that's what karma says.
Right. Probably because the movie is based in the US and the state of society is there. That's why people are just mass suiciding.
Absolutely. It's an Abrahamic society.
Just fed up.
So they believe there's only one life and only one afterlife. And once you're done with this life, you can enjoy paradise or whatever it is that comes next.
Right.
From our perspective, it's just a cycle. It's a process. So their perspective is very different from ours. And that's why it may make sense from that perspective that people may commit suicide.
Right. Which brings me to another question. Heaven and hell? What does science say about that?
Nothing. Absolutely.
They have no evidence, no clue. That's why.
Nothing.
They don't want to go there.
No, there's no evidence. How do we prove there's a heaven or a hell? We need to have photographic evidence, documentary evidence, video evidence, audio evidence, some evidence of some kind.
But is science looking at figuring this out, or they just not bothered?
Science is looking everywhere. It's looking at the universe. We have all kinds of telescopes, detectors, satellites, James Webb Space Telescope, Hubble Space Telescope, whatever else. We have all kinds of instruments, detectors of all kinds. We're looking at everything. And we have seen no evidence anywhere. So there you have it.
There are a couple of questions I have regarding a topic that is widely spoken about. But before we get into that, I just want a answer from you on a question from your personal opinion as a theoretical physicist and as a person who's very knowledgeable in history and geopolitics. If we rewind back to say 1960 and if you were the devil, what would you do? What would you place in society to completely ruin it?
To completely ruin society, I would prioritize physical pleasure, material enjoyment. I would promote all kinds of immoral behavior through the entertainment industry. I would promote. I would make people addicted to entertainment, to instant gratification, to dopamine releases. All of that. I would addict people to small screens and endless scrolling.
That's what's happening.
and that's how I would destroy society over a period of a few decades.
It's already happening. Happening.
Okay.
If I was a devil.
Right. So, this is about the multiverse that I have a question.
Okay.
There are two references within our two epics, Ramayana and Mahabharata, that I can think of for this. One is about Lord Krishna when he shows Brahmaji that there are multiple Brahmajis coming that represent different universes to confuse him and make him understand that he is not the only one because apparently he developed some ego that time.
Okay.
That's what the story says. And to humble him, Lord Krishna says that, hey, look, there are so many more like you. And he governs them in a way. The second reference is that Lord Rama, he drops a ring of his and in a crack in the earth's crust, and it goes all the way down to what we call the Patal Lok, or the underworld, and which is ruled by snakes, is what it said. And he sends Hanumanji after that ring, and when Hanumanji goes there, he finds many such rings. So the king of the serpents explains to him that there are many universes, and in that each there is a Hanumanji in each universe, there's a Lord Rama in each universe, and the same thing has happened in each universe where he's dropped his ring and they've all come here.
I see.
What does modern science have to say about this?
So when it comes to the multiverse hypothesis, nobody had imagined this until, I would say, the 20th century. Okay. From the modern science perspective. And then when we discovered the string theory, one of the interpretations is the many worlds theory. So that hints at a multiverse. Then there is the string theory landscape, which has about 10 raised to 500 different solutions, each pertaining to a different kind of universe. So that's how the multiverse idea came about. But like you're saying, we have had this idea for thousands of years. So clearly we have thought of it before. Now, how did we think of it and all, we don't know. But it's so Lord Brahma is the embodiment of the universe, isn't he? Brahman. And when he is born, the universe is born. And eventually, Lord Brahma is mortal and he will eventually one day die.
Yes.
And when he dies, the universe also ends with him. And like you said, Lord Krishna said, there are lots of Brahmas. You're not the only one. Some have 2 heads, some have 3 heads, some have other characteristics, which means we have lots of different universes with different characteristics. Different from ours. This is a mind-bending idea. How did somebody in the ancient past, one of our ancestors, think about this? Something that today we are speculating about from the scientific perspective. Now, from the scientific perspective, there is no proof of a multiverse. The math points in that direction. But to prove or disprove something is the falsifiability criterion, and this theory or this hypothesis is non-falsifiable, because to prove a multiverse, you would have to go outside this universe and get data from beyond it, get observational evidence from beyond it. And we can't do that. There's no way we can do it. We can't even see the entire universe that we inhabit. We can only see one part of it, which is called the observable universe, which is about 90 billion light years in diameter. It's a sphere with us at the center. That's the observable universe. The real universe is much bigger than that. And if there are other universes out there, how do we reach that? How do we get evidence? We can't. So from a scientific perspective, this is a hypothesis. It's not even a theory. It's more philosophy than science, even though there is math involved, because philosophy is also logical. So math can be used in philosophy as well. So that's the scientific perspective from the modern science perspective. But it is astonishing that our ancients, our ancestors thought of this thousands of years ago in a way that is so eerily seen today in physics. Lots of different universes with different properties. Not the same properties as our universe. Wow.
Okay, referring to the multiverse, I have a question right now that within the past year, there have been a couple of superhero movies that have come out, such as Flash, in which Flash, they've depicted him as a really fast guy, and so fast that he can run backwards in time and correct a mistake that he made and then come back. So he is basically creating 2 pathways, right? One that already happened and one that he's fixing and creating. So that creates infinity, such ways of living his life. Is this sort of a way of Hollywood to market the metaverse thing onto our lives?
What is the metaverse thing?
Like alternate realities and multiple realities.
So basically, the technological way of looking at this is that there's a VR headset right now. It's a very primitive, it's a very infancy stage development right now, where they're saying that I don't really have to leave my bed and go to Mount Everest physically, but I can just do it like that. So
I can experience going to Mount Everest just by wearing a headset.
So do you think this is their way of marketing that in a certain way, where we'll reach such a stage where we don't know the difference between reality and that virtual reality?
Yeah, we are getting there, aren't we? And there's big money in this. So obviously it's possible that a movie may have a tie-up that we are not aware of, and they want to market something that may be coming up, an upcoming product or something, which may be similar to what is being depicted in the movie. So we watch the movie, we say, what a wonderful thing. And then a few months later, this thing actually comes in the market.
Correct.
And we're like, hey, I want that. I want to experience this. It's possible, for sure.
Well, I think, sir, this has been a fabulous episode. The way time has flown by over here is unreal. And I think what we have understood, and my takeaway from this is that what modern science talks about today and claims to be modern has actually already been deciphered by a lot of our ancients and written about and talked about extensively with a lot of precision in some matters. Unfortunately, we have lost a lot of that evidence over, so much of destruction in our past in the recent 1,000 years, in the last millennia, where our, scriptures and millions of stuff that we, the kind of information that we had is all destroyed. And what I am understanding from talking with you is that we're trying to reinvent or rediscover things, is what I understand, because we already had it and we've lost it. And we're trying to just get back there. So with that, I hope that the next time we meet, we've had many more scientific advances that can answer some of our questions.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for having me. Pleasure.